Recording. There it goes. And so later on, if if you want to share this with any of your colleagues, it will be posted on YouTube. Usually, that's going to be on Monday or Tuesday, and the link will be sent out to everybody who registered for the webinar. So you should get an email with the link to it. Okay, so today's topic is adding drill downs to a report. And it's a pretty basic topic. Some time ago, I'm pretty sure that we covered the same topic for dashboards, adding drill downs to a dashboard. As it turns out, when you're designing dashboards, there are, I guess, a lot more options for doing a drill down type work because that is primarily because the dashboards are much more interactive by their nature. So in a dashboard, you can, there's automatic drill downs for charts and for crosstabs where you can drill to different levels of hierarchy. You can also, automatically pop up a detail table or data table for a chart or crosstab with the detail information. That's all kind of built into a dashboard. Reports, as we're going to look at now, are a little bit more limited. So there's not a lot of built-in drill down type operations. So if you want to drill down from summary information to detail information, you basically have to build that into the report yourself. And again, that's just because reports tend to be more static, and for the most part, people just open reports and look at them. But what we'll do is we'll look at a couple of genuine drill down operations in reports, and those are basically obtained by using hyperlinks, adding hyperlinks to, for example, a chart or a table or a text element. And then we'll look at a couple of techniques that are not, I guess, not genuinely drill downs because they don't actually, you're not actually drilling down to different levels of detail, but it's ways of incorporating detail information together with summary information. So let's find our Style Studio over here. I have this open in the background. Again, if anybody does not see my screen or is having difficulty, please let me know by typing in the chat box and I'll see what I can do. Of course, also, if there's any other interruptions, like an interruption to the video or audio, please type in the chat box and let me know. So the first thing I want to do is the most basic type of drill down that you can do in a report. And basically what I have here is my detail report that I've already created in Style Studio. And if you just want to see what this is, it's just a table. It's being shown in metadata view. So I could either choose to switch this to live edit mode, right? And then you'd see it would look like this, right? It's a long table. It's basically, there's a sample query called all sales, and this table is just returning the data from that query. And more typically what I would do if I wanted to preview that is I'd press the preview button, and this is basically it. And you can see it goes on for 17 pages. It's just a long table. Currently there's no filtering or anything on this table, so it's basically all the data that's being returned by that sample query. Now what I want to do is I want to create a summary report that will drill down to this detail report. So I'm going to leave this detail report open here, and obviously this is a report only in the simplest sense. It's just a single table. Of course, chances are if you were using this as a drill down report, there would be other things in it, like some kind of title and some other, maybe a date stamp, and you might have some other components in here, other charts, other tables. So this is really just, it's kind of just the most simplest report that I could come up with, just so as not to distract from the basic principles here. So we've got this drill down report, and now I'm going to create a very simple summary report. So I'll create a new report, blank tabular report, and in this new report, which is right now just called Untitled 3, I'm just going to add a chart, and it's going to be a basic chart that summarizes the sales for each sales employee. So what I'll do is I'll go to the toolbox, add a chart, there's the chart. And into the chart, I'm going to put some data. So I'll find from the order model, I'll use as my data source. So I'll have on the x-axis the, I guess, the names of the salespeople. Right. So the chart is in metadata view, so it just says, first name 1, first name 2, and the product total on the y-axis. Right. So what this chart will look like, if I were to, if I wanted to show the actual data, it would look something like this. Right? I switched that to live edit mode. So now I see this is the chart. It's got the 4 salespeople over here and their totals. Right? So this is an example of a summary type report. Obviously, again, it's a report only in the simplest sense. It's just a single chart. But of course, I could go ahead and add other components and a title and all the stuff that you would usually have in a real report. But for here, we'll just keep it simple with a basic chart. Now I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'll call this I guess I'll call this employee summary. This is my employee summary report. And then the idea here is that I want the user of the report to be able to, it's interesting, it's already got a hyperlink on it. That must be coming from the data model. Be interesting to see if that interferes with what I want to show you. You'll note that when I hover over these bars, the pointer turns into a hyperlink pointer. That means that it appears that there's already a hyperlink there. We can see what that is in a moment, but what strikes me is that that must be coming from the data model that I used to supply the data here. It's possible to put hyperlinks at the data model level, so I think that's what that must be. In any case, let's just proceed ahead and then we'll see how that plays into things. So what I want to do is I want the user to be able to click on one of these bars and drill down to the detailed data for that particular salesperson, right? For whichever salesperson they click on. And where is that detailed data going to come from? Well, I've got this detail report, which I call basic detail report, right? That's the report that contains the detail information. So what I want to happen is that somehow when the user clicks on one of those bars in the chart, I want to take them to this detail report that I've already created here, and I want to appropriately filter it so that it displays only the data for the salesperson that they clicked on, right? And that will, once I've got that in place, then I've got my drill down. So how do I do that? Well, the first thing I need to do is in the detail report, I need to apply a condition to this table to restrict the data in this table. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So I'll right-click on the table and select condition for the table. And I'll add a condition to this table that says employee is equal to, and if I press the Browse Data button here, you can see that I have 4 choices because they're in the query that's populating this table, right? There are 4 different salespeople, so I could filter the table to restrict it to one of those 4 salespeople, but that's not what I want to do here. What I want to do is I want to create a parameterized condition. So what I'll do is press the little pop-up button all the way on the right and select variable. And I'm going to create a parameterized condition that uses a variable called salesperson. Right? So the condition here that I'm going to append is employee is equal to a variable salesperson. Right? Now, where is the value of that variable going to come from? It's going to come from the hyperlink that the user clicks in the summary report. Right? So I'm expecting that value to be passed in to this condition from the summary report. So, so what I've done here is I've parameterized the table in my drill down report, so it will be filtered based on a value that's going to come from somewhere else. Okay, so I'll save that report, which now contains a parameterized table. If you were going to go ahead and preview this drill down report on its own, what you would find is that you'll be prompted to enter a value for that parameter. So you could, of course, do that. You could go ahead and just test it out, enter a salesperson name, press OK, and then just verify that this drill down report is in fact correctly parameterized and only displaying data for that particular salesperson. But that's not the way that we intend to use this. We don't intend the user to access that drill down report on its own. Rather, we intend them to access it only via hyperlink from the summary report. So now that I've got the drill down report parameterized, what I'm going to do is arrange it so that in the summary report, when the user clicks on one of these bars, a hyperlink will be set up to that drill down report, and a value will be passed into the parameter, the appropriate value from the chart will be passed into the parameter in the drill down report. So to do that, I'm going to click on the chart, and then in the properties panel at the bottom, go down to the hyperlink tab. And what we'll do here is we'll add a hyperlink to the chart. So there are 2 different kinds of hyperlinks. There's an asset link and a web link. An asset link means that you're going to drill the hyperlink's going to take you to another report or to a dashboard. The web link means that the hyperlink is going to take you to a web page. So in this case, we're going to do the asset link because we want to drill down to a report rather than to a website. And then once you select asset link, then you choose the report that you want to drill down to. That's going to be our basic detail report, right? That's this report over here that has our details in it and that we now parameterized, right? So that's what we're going to drill to. We can add a tooltip such as drill to employee details, or I guess salesperson details. Right, the hyperlink will appear either when the user hovers over the chart or when the user clicks on a bar on the chart. I think it depends whether you have multiple hyperlinks on the chart. So we'll see what the case is here. So drill to salesperson details. There are a couple of parameters here: send report parameters, disable parameter prompt. We'll see what those are in just a moment. And then what we have to do is you have to go to the add button over here, and in the parameter name field, it looks into the report that you're targeting, in this case the basic detail report, and it will show you a list of parameters that exist in that report. Right? In our drill down report, there is only one parameter. It's the parameter that we just used in the condition that we defined on that table. Right? It's the salesperson parameter. If our drill down report had other parameters, we would see those other parameters listed here, and we have to choose which of those parameters we want to catch the parameter that's passed from the summary report. So when the user clicks on the chart on the summary report is going to pass the name of the salesperson that the user clicked on, and it's going to pass it into whatever parameter we select here. In this case, the choice is easy because there is only one parameter in the drill down report. Now the value that we want to pass into the parameter, here we have a choice. When the user clicks on the chart, we can either choose to pass the first name corresponding to what they clicked on, or we can pass the total value for that user, for that salesperson. So here the choice is obvious. What we want to do is we want to pass the first name because we're passing it into the salesperson parameter in the drill down report, which expects the salesperson first name. Okay, so that's how you set up the hyperlink. Press OK, press apply, and that should basically be it. All right, so let's go ahead and test it out. So we'll save the report, and then what I can do is I can preview the report, and we'll test it out here, and then we'll test it out in the portal also. So let me preview the summary report, and here it is. Right, so this is the summary report, at least as Style Studio can do its best rendition of what the user will see. And you can see that there appears to be hyperlinks on the chart. So when I move the mouse over these bars, you see the hyperlink pointer. If I click on Eric, in fact, it just takes me to that to my drill down report. So it's interesting that I guess there is not a hyperlink from the data model, because it seemed like it did not give me any choices there, but rather when I clicked on that hyperlink, it basically took me to my detail report and filtered it appropriately so that I only see Eric's data, and that's all the data that I have in this report. Okay, so that worked fine. Let's just take a look at it in the portal. So I'll just open up the portal here, reload the repository, and see if I can find employee summary. So this is the way that users would really see it if they're using the portal, right? So there's the summary report. Again, it's just a trivial report with just a single chart. Obviously, for a real report, there would be other stuff there, presumably. And so if I click on a Sue, right, what it will do is it'll just drill down to my drill down report, follows the hyperlink to the report, and filters that report appropriately by passing the value, the first name value that I clicked on, into the salesperson parameter in the drill down report. So I see only Sue's data. Again, it's 5 pages long, all Sue's data. So that's the most basic example of a drill down, just using a hyperlink from a summary report to a detail report. Okay, if there's any questions on any of this, again, feel free to ask me. So let's look at something a little bit more interesting, and that is a case where you want to drill down from a report, but to the same report. Right. So I'm going to let me close this detail table that I have here. Right, and now I just have the summary report. Now let's say what I wanted to do here is I wanted to have a table below the chart, and when the user clicks on one of the bars on the chart, I want the table below the chart to be filtered. In other words, I want the report to reload with new data in the table corresponding to what the user clicked. Right, so I can actually do that, and I could do that by simply pointing the hyperlink unlike what we did in the example a moment ago where I pointed the hyperlink to a different report, I can actually point the hyperlink to the same report. So you click the hyperlink reloads the same report but with different parameters. So let's see how I would do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a table below the chart, the detail table. I'll make it perhaps a little bit shorter than the other one because the other table that we were looking at a moment ago was 17 pages long. And I guess I could do that, but let's see if I can maybe just do a little bit of grouping so it's not quite so lengthy. So I'm going to add a table below the chart. I'll press the table component in the toolbox to open the table wizard. And let's, I guess I'll just, you know what, I'm just going to use the exact same query that I used for the example a moment ago, which was the all sales query, and I'll just forego any grouping, right? So that query just has these columns. It's the same as the table that we were looking at, the detail table a moment ago. And I could do, you know, if I wanted to make the table a little bit more compact, I could do some grouping and summarization here. But I think I'll just leave it as a raw detail table, and you can see I have it in live edit mode here. But so there's the table below the chart. So that's fine. Move it down a little bit, give a little space. And if I preview this, right, you can see that it's this report is now 18 pages long because it's got this very long table beginning below the chart and just, you know, continuing on and on. But that's fine. I don't think that we need to worry too much about that, about the report being too long. We can see everything we need to see just as it is. So there's the chart, there's the table, and now my idea here is that I want to modify the hyperlink that I have on the chart so that instead of drilling down to that separate report that had the details, I want to modify this, this table that's right below the chart. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to put a condition on this table. All right, so I'm going to right-click on the table, select condition, and I'm going to put the same condition that we used before. Employee is equal to a parameter salesperson. Okay, parameter salesperson. Append, right, press OK. Okay, so now I've got this table parameterized, and so if we were to go ahead and preview the report again, oh wait, I would be prompted to enter a value for that parameter. Now, that might not be what I want, because ultimately what I want is the user to click on the bars on the chart, and that should filter the table. So perhaps I don't want to prompt the user initially to enter a value for salesperson. If that's the case, then I can disable that parameter prompt. I would simply go up to the report item in the menu, select parameter, find that parameter there. You see salesperson, the salesperson parameter is shown in italics, indicating that that parameter was not defined here, but rather it's defined in a condition, in this case a condition on the table. Of course, you can also define parameters here. There's a new button, so you could define report parameters here, but this parameter was defined elsewhere. However, over here I can choose that I do not want to prompt the user for that, and so if I preview the report now, I won't see that parameter prompt. It just goes straight to the report. And you may wonder, well, what happens to the condition on the table if I do not supply a value for that parameter, for the salesperson parameter? Remember that that parameter is used in the condition. Well, what happens is that, and this is a general rule, whenever a condition does not have a parameterized condition does not have a value for the parameter, the condition is ignored. All right, so that's what's happening here. All right, I'm loading up the report. I'm not supplying a value for the parameter because I wasn't prompted for a value. And so what happens here is that the table shows all the data because the condition is being ignored. Okay, so that's what we have so far. Now what I want to do is I want to change the hyperlink on this chart so that instead of targeting that basic details report that we had before, it's going to target the very same report, employee summary report, and pass a value into that salesperson parameter. So let's see if we can do that. So I'm going to click on the chart and again go down to the hyperlink tab at the bottom, and I'm going to change this hyperlink, right? So instead of targeting the basic detail report, I'm going to change this to target the employee summary report. That's the very same report, right? So I have a hyperlink going from this report to this report, right? And that should be okay, even though it sounds a little strange. So this hyperlink that I'm creating is targeting the very same report. It's going to reload the same report, the employee summary report, and I can leave the tooltip as it is, drill to salesperson details, and let me just let's just check what we have over here. Press the add button here. right? And you'll notice that in the parameter name field here, I don't see the name of that parameter. I don't see the salesperson parameter that I know that I created on that table. So why don't I see that? And I think the reason is that I didn't save the report. So let me back out of here for a second, save the report, right? So that should save the change that I now made, that the condition that I placed on that table. And let's try this all again. Again, click on the chart, hyperlink. All right, this part is still correct employee summary, press add. All right, so now I see, right, parameter name, salesperson. So that's the parameter that exists in this very same report, right? That the table has a condition that uses the salesperson parameter. That's why that's being shown there. And again, the rest of this is the same. When the user clicks on the table, I want to pass the first name that the user clicked on into the salesperson parameter in this very same report. And I know that that will then filter the table. Right, so that's the loop. It's basically it's basically a hyperlink from this report to this report. That's just changing the value of that salesperson parameter that's used in the condition on the table. Press OK. Now I've got something messed up here. One of these I have to delete. I'll delete them both and just make sure that I'm adding the right one. Okay, then press the apply button, and now we can test it out and see if this is going to work. Don't need to save the report. Let me just make sure that that change was saved. Okay, so let's test it first in the in Style Studio by doing a preview. All right, so there's our table. Initially, you can see the report is 18 pages long, meaning that this this table is not being filtered in any way. It's all the data from that query. Now, if I click on Eric, right, what you'll see is that the table below the chart updates, and now I've got only data for Eric, and the report is 6 pages long. Likewise, if I click Robert, right, so now the table is filtered to show Robert. And again, the reason that's happening is because of that hyperlink that I have on the chart. The hyperlink basically specifies that when you click on a name here, it should reload the same report and pass the value of that name into the salesperson parameter in the same report. And of course, that salesperson parameter is being used in the condition on this table to filter the table, right? So that's an example of how you can do a hyperlink within a single report. Let's just verify it in the portal. You'll notice in the portal it's a bit of a slower load process. Let's just check it out. So this was called employee summary. All right, so when it loads initially, I don't get prompted for any parameter, and again, I get the full length of the table, 18 pages. If I click on a particular name in the chart, right, the report will reload, right, and it has then just the data for the corresponding to the name that I clicked on. So that's an example of doing a drill down within the same report. Now let's go back, again, if there's any questions, feel free to ask. Let's go back to the way that we had it before. So I'm just going to change the hyperlink back to the way we had it originally, because I want to illustrate one other thing when you're drilling down to a different report. So I'm going to delete this table here and just put this example back to the way it originally was, with a hyperlink to this basic drill down, basic detail report. Let's make sure that this is right. Okay, so this should now be back to the way we had it for the example originally, where if I preview this, right, and I click on a link, it should load up that basic drill down report, the basic detail report. Now, let me illustrate how you would deal with a certain scenario here, and that scenario is when you have parameters in effect in the summary report. So for example, let's say that this summary report was in fact parameterized to present just a particular date range, right? So let's say that I created parameters here. Actually, let me do it in the on the chart itself. So I'll right-click on the chart, condition, and I'll have a condition here that restricts the dates in the chart. Right? Again, this is for the summary report. So order date is between, right? And I'll have this parameterized, right? Between some start date and end date. Start date, end date. Right, so these are, I've created two parameters here, start date and end date, and basically what I'm doing is I'm putting a parameterized condition on the chart, right, so that the data in the chart is restricted to some date range that I'm going to specify at a later time by providing values for that start date and end date. So I'll append that condition, press OK. If I preview this report, it should prompt me for those parameters, right? So if I preview this, right, start date and end date, and I can then choose a range. Let's say, I'm assuming that we have data for this year, so I'll just try January 2016 to let's say, October 2016, right? So I enter some date range, press OK, right? And this is data. Now I'm seeing data for just that date range, right? Basically the beginning of this year to essentially today. Right, so that's fine. The problem here is that I have these hyperlinks on this chart, and when I click one of these hyperlinks, right, I know that it's going to take me to my drill down report, so there it is. The problem is that the drill down report is not filtered for that date range, because if you look, you can see that you've got order dates over here that go back to 2013, which is basically the beginning of our data set. So that creates a bit of a weird, a weird situation that could be very easy for a user to misinterpret. In other words, over here they entered a couple of date range, and they think in the summary report they believe that they're looking at just this year, and then they click that hyperlink, and all of a sudden they're looking at data that goes all the way back to 2013. And what if they don't realize that, right? What if they think that all these records are actually from this year? Then they're going to be in a total confusion. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to make sure that when the user clicks that hyperlink and drills down to the details, that the details are also filtered for the date range that the user entered in the summary report. So let's see how we can make that happen. So I'm going to close this preview over here, and I'll reopen the detail report because I need to first make a change over there. Let's see if I can find that detail report, basic detail report. Right, so there's my basic detail report, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another condition on this table that will filter this table also for a range of dates. Right, so I'll right-click over here, select condition. Right, we know that there's already one clause on this table, right? And that's the condition clause that filters it and restricts it just to a particular salesperson. I'm going to add another clause here that says order date is between start date and end date. I'm going to use the same parameter names that I used in the summary report. Start date, end date. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm putting basically the same condition on my drill down, on my detail report that I have in the summary report. Right, same parameterized condition that will restrict the data in the detail table to only orders between some start date and end date that are going to be provided at a later time. And then what I need to do is I need to make sure that when the user clicks the hyperlink, that the start date and end date for the detail report are set equal to the same start date and end date that they had used in the summary report. Right, so that's the one further trick that I need to do. So once I've set up the condition, so I'll press insert. Right, so now I've got a two-part condition here, restricting the table both to a particular employee and to a particular date range. And the last trick that I need to do is make sure that the hyperlink passes in that start date and end date value from the summary report. So let me save the detail report, go back to the summary report, and there's basically just one trick to doing that. Right, so I'm back in my summary report, back on the hyperlink tab, and there's an option here called Send Report Parameters. Right, and basically what this does is when the user clicks the hyperlink, it will send all of the parameters that are defined in the parent report, in the summary report, which again in this case include the start date and end date, right? Start date and end date. The salesperson parameter is well, actually this could be an interesting this could be an interesting well, wait a minute, the salesperson parameter, why is there a salesperson parameter here? That's because this salesperson parameter is from the previous example that I was showing you when I had the table in the same report. So I don't think we need that anymore, right? That because we had that table with filtered in the same report for the salesperson, that doesn't need to be there anymore. So so back to the point I was making is that when the user clicks the hyperlink in the chart, we want to make sure that the hyperlink passes along the start date and the end date from the summary report. Right, and the reason that's going to happen is, again, because I selected Send Report Parameters here. It will pass along those values to the drill down report so that the drill down report, that table, will be appropriately filtered both for the date range as well as for the salesperson name. And the salesperson name, again, is being provided by the whichever bar the user clicks on. Okay, so press OK. Okay, so let's save this and let's just test out to make sure it works. So I'm going to preview the summary report, right? And here I am being prompted for the start date and end date. As we saw in a previous webinar, of course, you can make the labels here look nicer, and you can also do custom parameter prompting and so on, but I'll just leave this as it is. I'll select a couple of dates here. So January, and again, I'll just choose today. So from January, should probably choose January 1st just to be. So from the beginning of the year until today, that's my date range. Okay, and so the chart that I'm looking at is now filtered. It's showing me just the dates that I selected, January 1st until today. And now if I click on one of these links, then what I expect to see is I expect it to take me to the drill down report that will be appropriately filtered to show me just the salesperson that I clicked on, as well as the same range of dates that I'm looking at in the summary report. So let's see if that's the case. Click on Sue. All right, takes me down to this report. You can see this report only has one page rather than, I think it had 6 pages previously. And the reason for that is that the order dates are being filtered, restricted to just that range of dates that I selected from January 1st until today. Right, so basically what the hyperlink does is it looks at all of when you click that hyperlink in the summary report, it looks at all of the parameters that exist in the summary report and it passes them through to the drill down report. If they happen to match parameters in the drill down report, then those parameter values are copied into the drill down report. And in this case, the 2 parameters that we have in the summary report, start date and end date, both match parameters in the drill down report. So the values of start date and end date are copied into the drill down report parameters, and then that table can be filtered appropriately. Okay, so that's an example of passing along general report parameters to a drill down report. Okay, if there's any questions on any of that, feel free to ask. Let me just see where I am in check my little list of things that I wanted to cover here. Okay, so those are a couple of examples of what I would call genuine drill downs, where you're basically clicking on something and drilling down to detailed information, either in a separate report or in the same report. Let's take a look at a couple of examples that are kind of like drill downs, but it's basically instances of representing detail information together with higher level group information. And so the first example that I want to do is actually from our training course, where we basically create a section, and that section will contain both summary information and detail information within the same section. So that's not actually that hard to do. In fact, it's very easy to do, but we're going to do it in kind of a more interesting way here. So I'm going to close these reports, and I'll just open a new report, and I'll call this one, I guess I'll call it Master Detail Report, because that's what we call it in the training class. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create let me just find my place here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a section. So I'll find the section component, click that, and I'm going to select some columns here. So I'm going to go against the order model, and I'm going to select, let's see, salesperson first name, product total, product category, order num, and order date. And so basically what would happen if I just proceed ahead like this is basically when you create a section using the data binding wizard, it will create a section containing text elements. And so what I would have is a text element corresponding to each of these fields. Now in this case that's not what I want, because I'm going to create some grouping and aggregation, and I only want to group and aggregate on a couple of these fields, and I don't want to see the other fields. Instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the other fields as basically the detail information, as you'll see shortly. So I'm going to hide all the fields except for first name and total. So I'm going to hide this field. Oops, that's exactly the one I didn't want to hide. This field, and that field. Right? So the only fields, the only text elements that I'll have in the section, as you'll see in a moment, are going to be the first name and the total. And I'm going to group on those guys. So I'm going to group by first name and aggregate on total. So the result of this is going to be a section with text elements, and the text elements are basically going to be the salesperson first name and the aggregated total. So let's take a look at the result of this. All right, so the only text elements again, I think we looked at sections in an earlier webinar, but in case you missed it, a section is made up of bands, right? So each of these bands can contain essentially any other component. In this case, the bands are containing text elements. These are regular old text elements, but these text elements are bound to data, right? So if you click on a text element and you go down to the data tab at the bottom, you can see that each of these text elements, well, not every single one, but some of them are just representing text, like the ones in the header, but most of them are actually bound to data in the data source. And you can see that on the left panel here in the binding panel. You can see that it's, for example, this particular text element is, well, actually you can see that down here is bound to the product total field, and it's, it's basically summarizing the product total and so on. Okay, now in this example, we're going to get rid of some of these bands. In fact, the only ones we want are the detail band and the GH1 band, which is the group header. So in the, what I can do is I can hide the other bands. So I'll hide the header, hide that band, hide, before I hide GF1, I do want that summarized product total, so I'm going to push that up to the GH1 band. Right, so basically what the GH1 band, it's the group header 1, that's the first name group. It's going to give me the name of the group, which is going to be the salesperson name, and the corresponding group total. Right, so that's what I have there. I can get rid of these other bands. I don't need the GF1 band, and I don't need the global footer band. So that leaves me with a header band and a detail band. And if I were to look at this, what I would see is that and I can make this maybe a little bit easier to see by making this text element bold, so and a little bit bigger, so we'll be able to see. It'll be clear where the GH1 band is. So if I take a look at this in preview, right, you can see here's the GH1 band, right? It's the name of the group, the value of the group. In this case, Annie. There's Annie's total, and then come all the details, right? So pages and pages and pages of detail records corresponding to that group. And if I page forward far enough, eventually, I actually have to go pretty darn far. Oh, there it was. Right, eventually I finish up Annie's records, and then comes the next group, right? The next group is Eric, so there's the GH1 band is giving me the group information and Eric's total, and then come all of the detail records. So that's basically what I'm getting here. And I guess if I have one bold, I should probably have the total bold also. Okay, now, so that is an example of having both group information and detail information in a single entity. Again, that's pretty trivial, and you can see that just by going through the section wizard, it's very easy to have, to create a section that has both group information as well as detail information. So, but the thing that I wanted to show you is that you can do this in a, in a more interesting way, where the detail information is presented in a kind of a different manner. For example, using a table or a crosstab or a chart. So let's in fact illustrate how we can, in this detail band, how we can basically scoop up. Let me see if I want to resize this. Whoops. I want to resize the band, make it bigger. Right? We can scoop up all that detail information and present it, for example, in a chart or in a crosstab. Right? So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to remove these text elements from here. Right? And instead, what I'll do is I'm going to put a chart into this detail region. So I'm going to go to the toolbox, and I'll just drag a chart in there. Right, so I've got a chart. Right, and in this chart, what I'd like to do is I'd like to display kind of the breakout month by month. Right, the breakout of sales total month by month. Sorry, month by month. So to populate this chart, I want to use the data from the section. Remember that the section has access to 5 different fields: the first name and the total are the ones for which we created text elements, but it also has access to the date and I think the couple other things. I forgot what they were already, the order number and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the report node over here, go to element section 1, right? So this gives me access to the data in this section. And you can see that there I have the date, so I'll put the date on the x-axis of the chart. And I'll set the level to month. And I'll put the total on the y-axis. Okay. So now I've got this chart inside the detail band of the section, and if we take a quick look at this, take a quick look at the preview, all right, you can see that it's now a much shorter report, and basically what I have is I have the group band, which again gives me the grouping information, the summary information for the different employees, and I have this chart here in the detail band, and the chart is basically vacuuming up all of the detail information and just presenting it as a single chart. So again, this is not strictly an example of a drill down because I'm not clicking on anything to get the detail information, but it's an example of presenting summary level information and more detail information within the same component. And I can use the same technique also to throw a crosstab in there just to complete the example. The example that we do in the training has a few other elements to it, but I'm not going to, because we have such a limited time, I'm not going to worry about making anything look beautiful here, but I'll just throw a crosstab in here and just try to set up the crosstab here. Again, I'm going to go pull the data from the section component, which there it is. Again, gives me access to the 5 fields that I originally bound to the section component. And what I can do here is I can, for example, what would be? I could break this out by category, I guess, as the row header, and I guess I could put 2 different measures. Let's say the aggregate could be the order num and the total, so I could have 2 measures. For the order number, I want to count them up rather than sum them. Summing the order numbers doesn't make sense. Just want to count up how many there are. And then I could do, set the options for the crosstab to have those side by side. Show summary headers, summary cells side by side. So something like this, and then I'll just take a look at the preview and see if that looks okay. Trying to, there we go. Don't need this to be quite so far away. I moved the bottom of the page accidentally. So if I take a look at the preview, then I've got a chart for each group, Annie, Eric, and so on. I've got a chart and a crosstab, and both of those are basically scooping up all of those detail records and presenting them in this manner. So again, not a true drill down, but but can operate in place of a drill down. If you were thinking of creating a report that had this kind of summary level information, and then you were thinking, oh, but I want the user to be able to, see some, pardon me. I want the user to be able to see some, further breakdown of the data, some further detail in the data. So, one way you could do it, of course, is you could add hyperlinks to your summary level report that would then take the user to a drill down report that had a chart or had a crosstab with the more detailed information that you see here. But you could also do it this way. You could just create a section that presents both the summary level information as well as the detail level information. So it's just another approach to consider. In the event that you wanted to present each user on a different page, that's actually each salesperson on a different page, that's pretty easy. You could just go into the section properties. And for header 1 corresponding to group 1, you could just say new page before, right? And that would force then each salesperson to be represented on its own page. Okay, so that's an example of basically combining higher level summary information and lower level detail information into a single component, in this case a section. Let's take a look at one last thing, and then we'll be out of time. Pardon me, and it's kind of along the same lines, and that is the notion of using a sub-report within a section. And in fact, I think we might have actually covered the topic of subreports last month in the webinar when we were looking at reusability, because that is, one of the mechanisms of reusability that you have when you're designing reports is that you can create a subreport and use that subreport within many other reports, basically leveraging the single report and representing it in different ways within parent reports. And that's, I'll just revisit that again here, because that is also a way of representing detailed information together with summary information. So let's see, can I leverage this report? Let me see if I could leverage this guy here. Yeah, I guess I could use this. Let's see if I could use this very same report just to save a little time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these components that I put in here. And that just takes me back to basically just a summary level report. It's just a section that has the summary information, and it goes on for many, many pages. Actually, that might pose a problem. Let me think about if this is going to work. Person's first name. Well, yeah, here's what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the detail band. If I can do that. There it is. I saw the plus symbol there a second. It's not giving, oh, there it is there. Oh, here it is, way down here. Okay. So hide band. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do everything within this parent band. So if I take a look at this report now, if I preview this section, right, it's just 4 pages because it has just that GH1 band, right? It's just the group band, just the high-level summary information. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to also provide some detail information in here. And in this case, what I'd like to do is I'd like to use that drill down report that we had created previously inside this section, right? So let me open up that, let me find that basic detail report. Right, so remember this report from a few minutes ago. This is a report that basically just contains a table. It's got a condition on that table that restricts the dates and the employee that's shown in the table. In this case, what I want to do is I want to remove that date condition there, but I'm going to keep the restriction to the employee. Right, and maybe what I'll do here is well, let's just see what this gives us. So right now I'm going to save this report, and so I've got it's a basic report with a table that's filtered with the parameterized filter that restricts the data in the table to just a particular salesperson. Now what I want to do is I want to take this basic drill down report and incorporate it within this section, right? So that so each time the table appears in the section, it will be appropriately filtered to display just the details for the salesperson that corresponding to that band, to that grouping band. So what I'll do here is I'll add a subreport into the GH1 band. So I'll say insert special field subreport, click. Right, that gives me my subreport over there. And then what I'm going to use is for the subreport is the basic detail report that we already have. So right-click. Select properties for the subreport. I have to select the subreport, so press browse and I'll find that basic detail report .srt. That's the name of the report file. And then I'm going to click the links tab here, and it shows me that under parameters here that there is a salesperson parameter. That's the parameter in that basic detail report. Remember that the table there is filtered using a salesperson parameter, and the value that I want to pass into that parameter from the section, from the summary section, is the salesperson.firstname. Right? So what that means is that each time that the basic detail report appears as a subreport within the GH1 band, I want it to be filtered to display just the data for whatever the first name is for that instance of the GH1 band. Right? And again, there are 4 instances because there are 4 different repetitions of the GH1 band, one for each salesperson, right? So for the first instance, if that happens to be Eric, then the subreport in there should be filtered to display just Eric's data. So let's go ahead and see how this works, and I guess I don't need this to be so huge like that. Save this report, and let's do a preview of it. Preview this report. And what you can see here is that here I've got my section. I'm previewing the section. Again, the text elements in the section show the summary level information, Annie's total sales. And then what I should have is I should have the basic detail report that we already created appearing as a subreport within the section, but being filtered to display just the data for that particular group. So here's Annie, and there's all Annie's details. And then if I go, far enough ahead, eventually I'll get to Eric's summary information, and then Eric's details, and so on. Again, this is not, it's not a true drill down in the sense that I don't have to click on something to get the detail information, but it is an example of how you can, if you want to incorporate everything within a single report, you can do it in such a manner, right, by using a subreport within a section. Let me show you one last thing, and then we'll wrap it up. The last thing that I want to show you is that that you can, if you want to, you can toggle the detail information on and off. Now, there's no built-in feature to do that. You'll notice that there's no, there's no property that will allow the user, if you look at the preview here, right? There's no button that the user can press to say, just show me the summary information or just show me the detail information. That's something that you have to build in as the report designer. So let's see if we can build that in, really quickly. And so what my idea here is to, first of all, create a report parameter that will, oops, I'm in the wrong report. Create a report parameter that will determine whether the subreport is visible or invisible, right? That should effectively turn on and off the detail information, right? If I hide the subreport, then there's not going to be any details. If I show the subreport, then I've got my details. So the first thing that I want to do is create such a parameter. So I'll go to report, parameter, and I'll create a new report level parameter called something like show details. All right, so I'm just creating a new parameter in the report, and I guess for the default value, I'll set it to false. It's going to be a Boolean, so I'll set it to a Boolean. So that I guess I could set it to. I'll just leave it blank, so default will be false. So I've got a new parameter here, show details. It's a Boolean variable, which means that it can be either true or false, right? And now I've got to do two things. First of all, I've got to somehow use that parameter to set the visibility of the subreport, and then I've got to give the user some mechanism for controlling that. So two additional steps that I have to do. Press OK over there. So I've got the parameter defined. The next thing I want to do is go into the report onload handler. Right, so reports can have scripts at different levels. I think we might have done a webinar on scripting. I can't remember now if we did or we didn't. But anyway, if you're interested in some basics, you might want to scan back through the past webinars. Anyway, what I want to do here is click in an empty region of the report, and then down in the bottom, the properties panel, there's a script tab there, and this allows me to enter an onload script, on init script, on print, or on page break. Those are all different scripts that execute at different times. In this case, I want to create an onload script, which I can also do incidentally by right-clicking in an empty region of the report and selecting script. That will open the whole script editor. Again, you have the same options, on load, on init, on page break, and on print. You just have some other niceties provided by the editor, but I can write my script down here. And basically what I want to do is I want to say if the onload script executes whenever the report loads or is refreshed. So I want to say if parameter dot show details, right? Show details is the name of that parameter that I just created, that new variable, and this is the way that you access the value of a variable in script, parameter dot, and then the name of the variable. So if that's equal to true, then what I want to do is I want to show the subreport. So the way that I do that is I find the name, and I'm just doing this by typing. You could also do this if you had the full script editor by, it has a list of all the components in the report, and you could select from the list. But, something as simple as this, you could just type it also. You can see that it's prompting me as I type, and the name of the subreport is subreport1. That's the name of the component. Subreport1 dot visible equals true. Right? So in other words, if the show details variable happens to be set to true, then when the report is loading, then I want to show that subreport by setting its visibility to true. And I'll just say else subreport 1 dot visible equals false. Okay. So basically I've got this parameter that I defined, which is now controlling the visibility of the subreport in the section. So if show details happens to be set to true, then I want the subreport to be visible. Otherwise, I want the subreport to be hidden. Right? So that's the first of the 2 additional things that I needed to do. Right? So I'm going to save that on load script. Again, that will execute every time the report is refreshed or reloaded. The last thing that I need to do is give the user a way to change the value of that variable, of the show details variable. And I'll do that by putting an input component. I'll just stick it up here in the header. And I'm not going to worry about making nice labels or anything like that. I'll just throw a choice box up in there in the header, and this will allow the user to select whether they want to see the details or not. So let me now that I've got that choice component up there, I have to do a couple things. Right-click on it, select Properties, and go to the Choice tab over here. First thing I need to do is I need to select Submit on Change, because as soon as the user makes their choice, I want that choice to be submitted and the report to be refreshed. Right? So if I don't select Submit on Change, then nothing will happen when the user makes a choice in that in the choice box. Right? It'll just sit there and do nothing. Right? So I have to select Submit on Change. If I don't do Submit on Change, then I would have to provide like a button or some other mechanism for the user to submit their choice, but the easiest thing is just to make the choice submit immediately. Second thing I have to do is when the user makes a choice from that choice box, and they're going to be choosing whether they want to see the details or not, I need to specify what parameter should be set, what parameter in the report should receive the value of their choice. So I go over here to parameter name, and you can see that it's showing me it's going to show me a list of all the parameters that exist in the report, and in this report there is just one parameter defined, and that's the show details parameter. So when the user makes a choice from this menu, I want, which again is going to be the value that they submit is going to be a Boolean value, either true or false. So they're going to be submitting either true or false from here. I want that value to be captured in the parameter called show details, right? Which again is a Boolean parameter that we set up like 5 minutes ago, right? So that parameter will be either true or false based on what the user selects in that menu, and that choice will then be submitted immediately, right? And of course we know, because we set up that script a moment ago, that once that show details parameter is set, right, when the report loads, it's going to use the value of that parameter, true or false, to determine whether the whether the subreport is shown or not. So there's one more thing that we need to do here, and that is decide what the user is going to see in that menu. So next to the embedded option here, press Edit, and I'll just give the user a couple choices here. Show details. Oops, show details. All right, if the user selects that, I want to submit a value of true. Again, has to be submitting a Boolean value. And hide details, false. All right, so again, I'm just setting up the menu here. What the user will see in the menu are 2 options, show details and hide details. If the user selects show details, then the menu will submit, right, this choice box will submit a value of true, which will get passed into the show details parameter, because that's what I've set up over here. And the show details parameter is then used in that onload script to either hide or show the, if the user selects true, it will be to show the subreport. If the user submits false, then it will be to hide the subreport. So hopefully you get the whole flow here. It's a little bit, I mean, it's not that hard to do. It's just a few different things that you need to pay attention to. So press OK. All right, so now I've got the options set up for that choice box. I've got it passing a value, the value that the user chooses, true or false, into the show details parameter, and I've got it submitting immediately as soon as the user makes the selection. So press OK. And let's save this report and go ahead and test it out and see if it works. I can test it in the preview here. So here's my report. I'm going to preview it. And you can see that the first thing it does is prompt me for that value. That's not really what I want. I don't want to be prompted when I load the report. So let me cancel out of that, and I just want to suppress that parameter prompting. So again, here I went back to the parameter definition screen, select that parameter, turn off prompt user. I don't want to be prompted initially for that. And preview the report again. Right, and so you can see that initially, because I set the default for that variable to false, I don't see any of the detail information. Now that's a little bit weird because now I've got this blank page. So what I might want to do is I might want to put the section back the way it was originally, where without the page break. Again, you'd have to, if you're doing this for real, you'd have to work out the niceties of, how it's going to, what's the nicest way to present this. So I'll just put it back. Maybe make things a little tighter here. Okay, so let's try it again. All right, so the default here is that the subreport is hidden, right? The show details parameter is false by default, so I don't see the subreport. Right, I see only the summary information. Then I can go to this and I can select show details, right? And that shows the subreport. Now all of a sudden I've got the detail information, and the report inflates to 18 pages, and I still have the summary information, but I also have all the details. And then, if I want to, I can go to hide details, right? That submits a value of false. The report reloads. The onload script executes and hides the subreport and takes me back to just the summary information. So that's just an example of, if you do choose to go this route of having your summary information and your detail information in the subreport, you do have some mechanisms by which you can, choose which information you want the user to see at a given time by using these kinds of input components and, some fairly modest report scripting. Okay, well, I think I'm out of time, so I'm going to stop there. Feel free to ask any questions. I'll stay online for a minute or two just to see if there's any questions about anything that we covered today. I don't see anything so far, so just wait a few more seconds in case anyone is typing a very lengthy question. Okay, I don't see any questions popping up on my end, so I guess that was all totally clear. So makes me happy. Okay, so again, if you think of questions later on, you know my email, david.fass@inetsoft.com. Feel free to email me with a question if you have any. Otherwise, have a nice weekend, and hope to see you back next month. And the recording will be available hopefully early next week. Okay, take care, everyone. Thanks a lot.